Living in a quiet suburban neighborhood has always been a dream of mine. After years of city noise and the hustle-bustle, I finally found a place that felt peaceful, safe, and community-oriented. The neighborhood had everything I wanted: friendly neighbors, well-maintained houses, green lawns, and a community pool that everyone was encouraged to use. The pool was a major highlight, especially during the hot summer months. It was a place where kids played, families gathered, and neighbors casually chatted while lounging on chairs. I loved spending my weekends there, soaking up the sun and enjoying the water. Because of this, I was naturally very protective of the pool and the properties surrounding it. After all, it was a shared space that everyone had a right to enjoy, but it also required respect and care. I was an active member of the Homeowners Association, HOA, the group responsible for maintaining our neighborhood and enforcing its rules, so I took my responsibilities seriously. I attended meetings, voted on community matters, and trusted the HOA leaders to manage things fairly and transparently. One of those leaders was our HOA president, a woman I'd known casually but trusted as a figure of authority and integrity. Little did I know, this trust was about to be broken in a way I never imagined. It all started when I noticed something unusual happening around my own private pool. Now, to clarify, my pool was separate from the community pool. It was part of my backyard, fenced and gated for privacy. I had always assumed that no one would dare trespass there, especially not someone from the HOA, but week after week, I began to notice strange signs. My pool water seemed disturbed, the surface rippling as if someone had been swimming in it recently. Towels and pool toys were out of place. On several occasions I found the gate unlocked, even though I was sure I had locked it before going to bed. At first I brushed it off, thinking maybe a neighbor's child had found a way in, or perhaps the cleaning crew had been there more often than usual. But as the incidents became more frequent, my unease grew. To protect my property, I decided to install a small security camera pointing toward the pool area. It was a modest setup, nothing too invasive, just enough to monitor any activity. When I wasn't around, the footage that started rolling in stunned me. It wasn't a neighborhood kid or a random stranger, it was the HOA president herself. Night after night, she was sneaking through the fence, entering my backyard quietly, and slipping into my pool as if it were her personal swimming hole. She lounged by the water, swam leisurely, and even seemed comfortable enough to bring her phone and snacks, treating my property like it was her own. The betrayal hit me like a thunderbolt. Here was the person I had trusted to uphold the rules and respect everyone's property, and yet, she was flagrantly breaking the law by trespassing on mine. It felt surreal, like a bad dream. I played the videos over and over, hoping to convince myself it was some kind of mistake or prank, but it was undeniably her. I was faced with a mix of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and hurt. How could she justify this? What kind of example was she setting for our community? The situation was complicated. I didn't want to cause a scandal or create unnecessary drama in the neighborhood. The HOA president was a respected figure, and many residents admired her for her leadership and dedication. But what she was doing was unacceptable and illegal. Trespassing is a serious offense, and I couldn't simply ignore it. I also worried about what might happen if I confronted her directly. Would it escalate? Would she retaliate by misusing her power in the HOA? I felt stuck between protecting my rights and avoiding conflict. So, I took a cautious approach. I started documenting everything carefully, saving the footage, noting the dates and times of her visits, and researching the laws and HOA rules on property boundaries and trespassing. I also discreetly spoke to a few close neighbors to see if they had noticed anything strange, and to gather their thoughts on how I should proceed. After a week of planning, I decided to confront her in a way that would leave no room for denial or argument. One evening, I waited near the pool area, hidden from sight, hoping to catch her in the act once more. As expected, she arrived under cover of darkness, entering through the fence, just like before. This time, instead of staying quiet, I stepped out and confronted her directly. She looked startled but quickly tried to brush it off, claiming that as HOA president she had certain rights to use community spaces, even if they were private property. I explained firmly that my pool was not a community amenity. It was part of my personal property, protected by law. The conversation grew heated as she refused to back down or apologize. Witnesses from nearby houses called the police after hearing the commotion, and within minutes, officers arrived to assess the situation. The police took the matter seriously. After reviewing the security footage and hearing both sides, they confirmed that her actions constituted trespassing. She was ordered to leave immediately, and a formal report was filed against her. The incident sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. It sparked tough conversations about trust, leadership, and respect within the community. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting to discuss the breach of conduct by their president. Some residents were outraged and demanded her resignation, while others were more sympathetic but agreed that boundaries had been crossed. For me, personally, the event was both a painful betrayal and a wake-up call. I realized that no one is above the rules, and that standing up for your rights even against someone in power is crucial. The pool, once a source of joy and relaxation, had become a symbol of violated trust. But with the police involved and the community watching, I felt hopeful that justice would be served, and our neighborhood would heal and move forward with stronger respect and accountability. The days following that shocking night felt surreal. The image of the HOA president sneaking into my pool lingered in my mind like a bad episode in a reality show. I found it difficult to believe that someone so prominent in our community could act so brazenly, breaking into private property repeatedly, as if the rules didn't apply to her. The footage I had collected was undeniable evidence. But what disturbed me more was the apparent casualness with which she carried out these visits. It wasn't some desperate act or momentary lapse in judgment. It was deliberate, consistent, and without shame. Each time she entered my backyard, she treated it like her personal oasis, oblivious to the fact that she was violating not just my space, but the trust placed in her by our entire neighborhood. In the days that followed, I wrestled with an array of emotions. There was anger, yes, but also a profound sadness. This woman was not just an HOA president. She was a neighbor, someone many of us had invited into our lives at community barbecues and meetings. The betrayal felt deeply personal. I started to question everything I thought I knew about leadership and trust within our HOA. If the president could so blatantly disregard others' rights, what else might be happening behind closed doors? I shared my concerns quietly with a few close friends in the neighborhood, and while most were shocked, some admitted they had suspected things were not always as transparent as they seemed. This revelation had opened a door to broader issues that needed to be addressed, and it was clear that my situation was only the tip of the iceberg as the news of the incident began to spread. Though I was initially hesitant to share details publicly, the community's reaction was mixed but intense. Some neighbors expressed outrage, demanding that the HOA take swift and decisive action. They felt that if the president's behavior was tolerated, it would set a dangerous precedent, encouraging others to ignore rules and boundaries. Others were more cautious, suggesting that perhaps the president was under stress or dealing with personal problems that explained her actions, if not excusing them. This divide in opinion made me realize how complex the situation truly was. It wasn't just a matter of trespassing. It was about leadership, accountability, and the fragile social fabric of our community. The HOA board quickly called an emergency meeting to discuss the matter. It was clear they wanted to handle the situation delicately but firmly. During the meeting, the president herself attempted to justify her actions, claiming she believed she had implicit permission as a community leader to access the pool area whenever she wanted. This argument was met with disbelief and frustration. The board members reviewed the video evidence and legal advice that had been sought, which made it clear that no such permission existed, and that her actions violated both HOA rules and local trespassing laws. After hours of discussion, the board unanimously agreed that disciplinary measures were necessary, including suspending her from her position and initiating a formal investigation into her conduct. The decision was met with relief by many residents, but also with tension, as the president vowed to fight back. Meanwhile, I focused on restoring a sense of normalcy to my life. The pool, which had once been a sanctuary, now felt like a battleground. I upgraded my security system, installing additional cameras and reinforcing the fence to prevent any future unauthorized access. I also organized informal gatherings with neighbors to discuss ways to improve transparency and communication within the HOA. These meetings became a platform for residents to voice their concerns, share their experiences, and propose changes that would prevent similar incidents from happening again. The sense of community, while shaken, showed signs of resilience. People came together with a renewed commitment to uphold fairness and respect in our neighborhood. Throughout this ordeal, I found myself reflecting deeply on the nature of trust and authority. Being in a position of power, whether in a homeowners association or any leadership role, comes with a responsibility to act ethically and transparently. When that trust is broken, the consequences ripple far beyond the immediate victims. The community's faith in its institutions can erode quickly, leading to cynicism and division. My experience with the HOA president was a stark reminder that no one should be above the law or the standards expected by their community. At the same time, it showed me the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it feels uncomfortable or risky. Had I ignored the signs or failed to act, the situation might have escalated further, causing greater harm. In the weeks that followed, the HOA president's suspension marked a turning point. She ceased all attempts to enter my property or interfere with community matters, and the investigation moved forward under the board's supervision. The police report served as an official record of her trespassing, which helped protect my rights and set a precedent for handling similar incidents in the future. I remained actively involved in the HOA, advocating for stronger policies around property boundaries and respectful use of shared and private spaces. The incident, while deeply unsettling, sparked important reforms that made our neighborhood safer and more transparent. For me personally, it was a journey from betrayal to empowerment, a lesson in vigilance, justice, and the power of community solidarity. As the HOA president's actions continued to reverberate Throughout the neighborhood, I couldn't help but reflect on the emotional toll the entire ordeal had taken on me. It wasn't just the invasion of my private space or the legal violations that weighed heavily, it was the profound sense of betrayal from someone I once respected and trusted. Leadership positions carry an unspoken promise. Those who hold them are expected to act with integrity and fairness. When that promise is broken, it shakes the foundation of community trust. I found myself waking up to feelings of anger mixed with disappointment. It was hard not to question whether this was an isolated lapse in judgment or indicative of deeper problems within our HOA's leadership culture. For many days, I struggled with these conflicting emotions, unsure how to process what had happened and what steps to take next. The emotional impact extended beyond just me. Neighbors who had supported the HOA president and considered her a friend also faced a reckoning of sorts. During informal conversations and neighborhood gatherings, it became clear that many were experiencing a similar sense of shock and disillusionment. Some residents shared stories of subtle rule-bending or questionable decisions in the past, but none had expected something as blatant as trespassing on private property. The incident ignited long-simmering frustrations that had been kept under wraps out of respect or fear of confrontation. Suddenly, conversations that had been hushed or avoided became open dialogues. While painful, this transparency was a necessary step toward healing and rebuilding trust. It became obvious that the community needed more than just a change in leadership. It needed a cultural shift toward accountability and respect. I also felt a growing responsibility not just to myself, but to the entire neighborhood. This experience had put a spotlight on vulnerabilities that many residents hadn't fully recognized. The HOA president could ignore boundaries so blatantly. Who else might be tempted to do the same? What protections were in place to prevent future abuses of power? These questions led me to dive deeper into the HOA's governance, structure, and policies. I reviewed our bylaws, code of conduct guidelines, and procedures for addressing grievances. What I found was a mixed bag. While the documents laid out rules and responsibilities clearly, enforcement mechanisms were often weak or inconsistently applied. Many decisions were left to the discretion of a small group of leaders, with little transparency or accountability to the broader community. This lack of checks and balances created an environment where power could be abused without swift consequences. Motivated by these findings, I began advocating for reform within the HOA. I reached out to other concerned residents and together we formed a committee focused on governance improvement. Our goal was to create stronger oversight, clearer guidelines on conduct, and more democratic processes for electing and monitoring leadership. We wanted to ensure that no one, regardless of their position, would be above the rules. This effort required patience and diplomacy, as some board members resisted change or downplayed the severity of the situation. However, the collective voice of the community, empowered by recent events, proved to be a powerful catalyst. We organized forums and workshops to educate residents about their rights and responsibilities, and to encourage more participation in HOA decisions. Slowly but surely, a renewed sense of vigilance and engagement began to emerge. Throughout this process, I was reminded of the importance of communication. Much of the mistrust and confusion had stemmed from a lack of transparency. The HOA president had operated behind closed doors, and residents had felt excluded from key decisions. By fostering open dialogue and sharing information openly, we aimed to rebuild the community's confidence in its leadership. At the same time, I recognized the need for compassion. While her actions were unacceptable, it was important to understand the human side of the story, the pressures, mistakes, and complexities that might have influenced her behavior. This balanced perspective helped prevent the situation from devolving into personal vendettas or division. Instead, it became a lesson in accountability coupled with empathy. On a personal level, the ordeal strengthened my resolve to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult. It taught me that trust must be earned continuously, and that safeguarding it requires courage and vigilance from everyone involved. I also learned the value of community, that when people come together with shared purpose, they can overcome challenges and create positive change. While the HOA president's trespassing had initially felt like a devastating breach, it ultimately served as a catalyst for growth and renewal. The neighborhood was no longer just a collection of houses. It was a community that cared deeply about fairness, respect, and justice. And I was proud to be part of that transformation. With the emotional shock behind me and the community beginning to rally, I knew it was time to take concrete action to protect my rights and ensure something like this never happened again. First and foremost, I focused on gathering all the evidence I could: videos from the security cameras, detailed notes on dates and times, witness statements from neighbors who had noticed unusual activity, and correspondence with the HOA board. Having this solid documentation was crucial. It wasn't just about proving that the HOA president had trespassed repeatedly. It was about establishing an official record that could support legal action if necessary. I consulted with a local attorney who specialized in property law and HOA disputes. After reviewing the evidence, the attorney assured me that my case was strong and that the law was clear. No one, regardless of position, has the right to enter private property without permission. The attorney also helped me understand the legal definitions around trespassing, property rights, and the responsibilities of HOA leadership. This knowledge gave me confidence and clarity. I realized that while community harmony was important, it could not come at the cost of personal boundaries and respect for the law. I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, accompanied by the video evidence and the attorney's opinion. The complaint called for immediate action, including disciplinary measures against the president and clearer policies to prevent future abuses. I also informed the local police department, which had already filed a report from their visit the night they came to break up the confrontation. The involvement of law enforcement added weight to the issue and underscored the seriousness of the violation. The HOA board responded promptly, scheduling an emergency meeting to discuss the allegations. While some members expressed shock and concern, others seemed reluctant to believe that their leader could behave so recklessly. During the meeting, I presented my evidence and answered questions. It was difficult to face a room of people, including some who had been close to the president and were torn between loyalty and the facts. The president herself appeared at the meeting and gave her side of the story. She admitted to entering my property but insisted it was out of misunderstanding or a belief that she had community rights to the pool area. Her tone was defensive but lacked any genuine remorse. This only strengthened the board's resolve to take disciplinary action. Following lengthy deliberations, the board voted unanimously to suspend the HOA president pending a full investigation. They also agreed to revise the HOA's rules to clarify boundaries between private and communal property and to strengthen enforcement procedures. The board pledged to increase transparency and encourage greater community involvement in governance. This was a significant victory for the neighborhood and a clear message that no one was above the rules. However, I knew the process was far from over. The president still held influence and could attempt to undermine the reforms or retaliate. I prepared myself for a potentially difficult road ahead, but I was determined to protect my property and help rebuild trust within the community. In parallel with the legal and HOA processes, I took practical steps to secure my property. I upgraded my security system, installing higher resolution cameras and motion sensors around the pool area. I reinforced the fencing and added locks that were more difficult to tamper with. I also posted clear signs warning against trespassing, which was a helpful deterrent. These measures were not just about security. They were symbolic affirmations of my right to privacy and safety. Neighbors expressed support and some even volunteered to keep an eye on my property. This sense of solidarity was encouraging and reminded me that community strength comes from looking out for one another. The incident also sparked a broader conversation in our neighborhood about leadership, accountability, and community rights. At subsequent HOA meetings and informal gatherings, residents voiced concerns about transparency, rule enforcement, and fair treatment. Many shared stories about past incidents where they felt powerless or ignored. These conversations led to the formation of a new oversight committee that included ordinary residents, tasked with monitoring HOA decisions and ensuring that policies were implemented fairly. This shift toward greater democratic participation was a direct result of the trespassing incident, and it energized the community. People who had been passive or disengaged became active participants in shaping the neighborhood's future. Personally, I found that this challenging experience deepened my understanding of community dynamics and governance. It reinforced the idea that property rights are fundamental but must be balanced with mutual respect and shared responsibility. It also highlighted the importance of vigilance and speaking out against wrongdoing, even when the perpetrator holds a position of authority. Through it all, I remained committed to fostering a positive environment where neighbors could feel safe, valued, and heard. The journey from shock and betrayal to action and reform was difficult but necessary, and I hoped our story could serve as a cautionary tale and inspiration for other communities facing similar challenges. The police involvement added a layer of seriousness to the situation that the community had never experienced before. When the officers arrived that night, the atmosphere shifted immediately. What had started as a tense but private confrontation between me and the HOA president escalated into an official investigation. The officers were professional and thorough, taking statements from both sides and reviewing the security footage I had collected. They explained clearly that trespassing was a criminal offense, even if it involved a community leader, and that their role was to enforce the law impartially. I was both relieved and anxious. Relieved that the authorities were taking my complaint seriously, but anxious about the possible fallout. I worried about how this might affect the neighborhood dynamics, the HOA's reputation, and even my personal relationships with neighbors who might be caught in the middle. Over the next several days, I was in regular contact with the police department. They informed me that a formal trespassing report had been filed and that they were preparing a case to present to the local prosecutor. The officers also advised me on how to protect myself legally and emotionally throughout the process. They recommended I avoid direct confrontations with the HOA president and to keep detailed records of any future incidents. Their support was invaluable, and it helped me feel less isolated during what was becoming an increasingly complex ordeal. The reality of having law enforcement involved in a community dispute was sobering. It reminded me that boundaries and rules exist for a reason and must be respected by everyone. News of the police report quickly spread through the neighborhood. Reactions varied widely. Some residents were shocked that things had escalated to this level. They expressed sympathy for me and praised my courage for standing up to the HOA president. Others were uncomfortable, fearing that the incident would create lasting divisions or tarnish the community's reputation. A few expressed doubt, wondering if the situation had been blown out of proportion or if there was more to the story. The diversity of opinions highlighted just how complicated community dynamics can be. It also underscored the importance of transparent communication from the HOA board and a fair, unbiased investigation to restore trust and calm. In the weeks following the police involvement, I attended several community meetings where the incident was openly discussed. These meetings became forums for residents to express their feelings, ask questions, and propose solutions. The board invited the police department to speak about the legal aspects of trespassing and community safety, which helped clarify many misunderstandings. Residents began to see the issue not just as a personal conflict but as a broader challenge about governance, respect, and accountability. The shared discussions fostered empathy and understanding, paving the way for healing and cooperation. It was encouraging to witness the neighborhood coming together to address the problem constructively rather than allowing it to fester and divide. The HOA president's suspension and the pending investigation added tension, but they also signaled that the community was committed to upholding standards and protecting residents' rights. I noticed some attempts by her supporters to downplay the situation or defend her actions, but these were largely overshadowed by calls for fairness and justice. The board was careful to maintain impartiality, emphasizing that the investigation would be thorough and transparent. This approach helped prevent rumors and misinformation from spreading, and reassured residents that the matter was being handled professionally. It was a delicate balance to strike, but necessary for restoring confidence in the HOA's leadership and decision-making processes. Throughout this period, I also found support from unexpected places. Several neighbors reached out privately to express solidarity and offer help. Some shared their own experiences with property disputes or concerns about HOA leadership, and we formed a small support network. This sense of community was a silver lining amid the turmoil. It reminded me that while individual actions can cause harm, collective strength and kindness can heal and empower. Together, we worked to encourage more residents to participate in HOA elections and meetings, emphasizing the importance of active engagement in shaping our community's future. This renewed civic spirit was one of the most positive outcomes of the entire episode, reflecting on the police involvement and the community's response. I realized how important it is to address issues promptly and firmly. Ignoring or minimizing serious breaches of trust only allows problems to grow. By involving law enforcement and insisting on accountability, I helped set a precedent that would deter similar misconduct in the future. It wasn't easy to face the situation head-on, especially knowing that it might cause discomfort or conflict, but I knew it was necessary. The experience reinforced my belief that upholding personal boundaries, respecting property rights, and demanding ethical leadership are fundamental to building a strong, safe, and thriving community. And with the support of my neighbors and the law on my side, I felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the investigation into the HOA president's repeated trespassing progressed, the community's attention shifted toward the bigger picture. How could such a serious breach of trust have gone unnoticed or unchecked for so long? The incident exposed not only one individual's wrongdoing but also weaknesses in the governance system that allowed it to happen. This prompted a thorough review of the HOA's rules, policies, and enforcement mechanisms. The board called for expert consultations, bringing in legal advisors and community management professionals to help restructure and strengthen the HOA's framework. The goal was to create a more transparent, accountable, and responsive organization that could better serve the residents and prevent abuses of power. I was invited to participate in these discussions, representing the voices of concerned neighbors, who wanted meaningful reform rather than just temporary fixes. One of the first changes proposed was the establishment of clearer boundaries between private properties and common areas. While the pool itself was technically a communal facility, the president's ability to access my personal backyard through the pool gate had created a loophole that needed to be closed. New policies clarified access rights and reinforced the importance of respecting individual property lines. Additionally, stronger rules were put in place regarding the conduct of HOA leaders, including mandatory ethics training and strict consequences for violations. Transparency was emphasized through regular publication of meeting minutes, financial reports, and clear channels for residents to raise complaints or concerns anonymously. These reforms aim to rebuild trust and ensure that the HOA operated as a fair and open institution. The restructuring process wasn't without its challenges. Some long-standing members of the board resisted changes, fearing that increased oversight might limit their authority or create bureaucratic hurdles. Others worried that the community might become divided or less cooperative. But the momentum for change was undeniable. The neighborhood had been shaken, and residents demanded action. I worked closely with other advocates to present the benefits of reform, emphasizing how a transparent and accountable HOA could strengthen community ties and prevent future conflicts. We organized informational sessions, distributed newsletters, and engaged residents in the process to foster buy-in and collaboration. Over time, even skeptics began to see the value in these changes and supported the efforts to modernize the HOA's governance. At the same time, the personal impact of the president's misconduct lingered. Some neighbors remained uneasy or wary, unsure how to interact with the former leader or those loyal to her. I made a conscious effort to promote healing and unity, encouraging open dialogue and respectful communication. Community events, such as potlucks and cleanup days, became opportunities to rebuild relationships and focus on common goals. While the scars from the trespassing incident didn't disappear overnight, these gatherings helped shift the narrative. From division to cooperation, I found it important to acknowledge the pain caused while also highlighting the resilience and potential of our neighborhood to come back stronger. Legal proceedings against the former HOA president moved forward. Alongside the governance reforms, the local prosecutor reviewed the evidence and decided to pursue charges for criminal trespassing, sending a clear message that such behavior would not be tolerated. The case was scheduled for court, and I prepared to testify, knowing that my participation was vital in holding her accountable. Though the prospect of legal confrontation was daunting, I remained committed to seeing justice served not out of spite, but to uphold the principles of fairness and respect that had been violated. The courtroom process was tense and emotional, but it also provided a formal forum for the truth to be heard and for consequences to be imposed. Throughout this entire journey, the support of my neighbors was crucial. Their encouragement, willingness to speak up, and active involvement in reform efforts made a profound difference. It reminded me that communities are not just about shared spaces, but about shared values and mutual care. The incident with the HOA president was a harsh lesson in vigilance and courage, but it also sparked a powerful movement toward transparency, fairness, and accountability. Looking back, I realized that while the betrayal was painful, it ultimately galvanized us to create a better, safer, and more connected neighborhood. This experience taught me that positive change often arises from the willingness to confront difficult truths and work together for the common good. As the dust began to settle and the legal and community processes drew to a close, I found myself reflecting deeply on the journey we had all been through. What started as a shocking violation of privacy and trust had transformed into a powerful lesson about the importance of accountability, the strength of community, and the need for vigilance. In protecting our rights, the HOA president's trespassing was more than just an isolated incident. It became a catalyst for change that reshaped the way our neighborhood governed itself and interacted. While the path had been difficult and fraught with tension, it ultimately led to growth, healing, and a renewed commitment to shared values. I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the neighbors who stood by me and for the systems of justice and governance that had supported our efforts. The legal case against the former president concluded with a ruling that upheld the seriousness of her actions. She was found guilty of criminal trespassing and faced penalties that included fines and community service. More importantly, the verdict sent a clear message to the entire community that no individual, regardless of their position or influence, was above the law. This outcome brought a sense of closure and reinforced the principle that trust must be earned and protected vigilantly. It also underscored the vital role that community members play in safeguarding their own rights and ensuring that leaders remain accountable. Knowing that justice had been served gave me a renewed confidence in the legal system and its ability to protect ordinary citizens. In the wake of these events, the HOA implemented the comprehensive reforms that we had fought for. Transparency and communication improved dramatically. Monthly meetings became more accessible, with agendas and minutes shared openly, allowing all residents to stay informed and involved. The introduction of ethics training for board members and stricter enforcement of rules helped foster a culture of respect and responsibility. These changes not only restored faith in the HOA, but also strengthened community bonds. Residents felt empowered to voice concerns and participate actively in decisions that affected their neighborhood. This level of engagement was a stark contrast to the previous atmosphere of silence and deference, marking a new era of openness and collaboration. Beyond the structural reforms, the incident inspired a broader reflection on what it means to live in a community. Boundaries, both physical and social, are essential, but so is empathy. I realized that while it was crucial to hold the former president accountable, it was equally important to approach the situation with understanding and grace. People make mistakes, sometimes serious ones, but how a community responds defines its character. By fostering dialogue, promoting healing, and encouraging participation, we transformed a painful conflict into an opportunity for growth. The neighborhood was no longer just a collection of houses, but a living, breathing community, committed to mutual respect and shared responsibility. Personally, the experience strengthened my sense of agency and purpose. It reminded me that standing up for one's rights requires courage, but also yields meaningful change. I became more involved in local governance and community initiatives, motivated by the belief that active citizenship is essential for a healthy, thriving neighborhood. I also developed a deeper appreciation for the complex dynamics of community life, the balance between individual freedoms and collective well-being. This balance is delicate but achievable when residents commit to transparency, accountability, and empathy. The ordeal with the HOA president was a stark reminder of the consequences when that balance is disrupted, but also of the hope and resilience that emerge when communities come together to heal. As I look to the future, I am optimistic about the direction our neighborhood is heading. The lessons we learned from this difficult episode continue to inform how we manage conflicts, communicate, and build trust. While challenges will inevitably arise, I am confident that our community is better equipped to handle them with fairness and unity. The incident will always be part of our collective history, but it no longer defines us. Instead, it stands as a testament to our strength, our commitment to justice, and our ability to grow stronger through adversity. For me, it is a reminder that every member of a community has a vital role to play, not just as residents, but as guardians of the values that make a place truly home.